The red-bearded sailor, who had his weather eye on the newcomers, boarded Stephen, who he had singled out for the attention in particular, squarely by asking, "What may your name be?" Just in the nick of time, Mr. Bloom touched his companion's boot, but Stephen, apparently disregarding the warm pleasure from an unexpected quarter, answered, "Daedalus." The sailor stared at him heavily from a pair of drowsy, baggy eyes, rather bunched up from excessive use of booze. "You know Simon, Daedalus?" he asked at length. "I've heard of him," Stephen said. Mr. Bloom was all at sea for the moment, seeing others evidently eavesdropping too. "He's Irish," the seaman told the firm, staring still much the same way and nodding. "All Irish." "Or too Irish," Stephen rejoined. As for Mr. Bloom, who could neither make head nor tail of the whole business, he was just asking himself what possible connection, when the sailor, of his own accord, turned to the other occupants of the shelter with the remark, "I seen him shoot 2 eggs off 2 bottles at 50 yards over his shoulder. The left-hand dead shot." Though he was slightly hampered by an occasional stammer and his gestures being also clumsy as it was, still he did his best to explain. "Bottles out there, 50 yards measured. Eggs on the bottles." Cocks his gun over his shoulder, aims. He turned his body half around, shut his right eye completely. Then he screwed his features up somewhat sideways and flared out into the night with an unprepossessing cast of countenance. "Pa!" he shouted once. The entire audience waited, anticipating an additional detonation, there being a further egg. "Pa!" he shouted twice. Egg 2 evidently demolished. He nodded and winked, adding bloodthirstily, "Nice bit of work." The face of the streetwalker, glazed and haggard under a black straw hat, peered askew around the door of the shelter, palpably recountering on her own with the object of being more grist to her mill. Mr. Bloom, scarcely knowing which way to look, turned away on the moment, flusterfied, but outwardly calm, having recognized on the moment round the floor the same face he had caught a fleeting glimpse of that afternoon on Alney Quay. Just then, being on tenterhooks, it came as a genuine relief when the keeper made her a rude sign to take herself off. And then there was no more of her.
Here we are at the penultimate section, James Joyce's favorite passage, so the story goes. I don't know if we can believe anything that Joyce says to Gilbert Stuart, or Stuart Gilbert, but that's at least what it says. And to join me in the reading of that passage, an artist, poet, the author of The Green Ribbon, Dan Cleary, born in Ireland, paid a visit there last year and spent a couple of days in Dublin to soak up some of the atmosphere of that fair city. Mr. Dan Cleary. What did his limbs, when gradually extended, encounter?
No clean bed linen, additional odors, the presence of a human form, female, hers, the imprint of a human form, male, his, some crumbs, some flakes of potted meat, recooked and removed.
If he smiled, why would he have smiled?
To reflect that each one who enters imagines himself to be the first to enter, where he is always the last term of a preceding series, even if the first term of a succeeding one. Each imagining himself to be the first, last, only and alone, whereas he is neither first nor last, nor only alone in a series originating in and repeated to infinity.
What preceding series?
Assuming Mulvey to be the first term of his series, Penrose, Bartell, Piazzi, Professor Goodwin, Julius Mastianeschi, John Henry Menton, Father Bernard Corrigan, a farmer at the Royal Dublin Society Horse Show, Maggot O'Reilly, Matthew Dillon, Valentine Blake Dillon, Lord Mayor of Dublin, Christopher Callahan Lenehan, an Italian organ grinder, an unknown gentleman in the Gaiety Theatre, Benjamin Dollard, Simon Daedalus, Andreas Tisser, Burke, Joseph Coffey, Wisdom Healy, Alderman John Hooper, Dr. Francis Brady, Father Sebastian of Mount Argus, a bootblack at the General Post Office, U. E. Blazes Boylan, and so each and so on to the last term.
What were his reflections concerning that last member of this series, the late occupant of the bed?
Envy, jealousy, abnegation, equanimity.
By what reflections did he, a curious reactor against the void of uncertainty, justify to himself his sentiments?
The preordained frangibility of the hind, the presupposed intangibility of the thing in itself, the incongruity and disproportion between the self-prolonging tension of the thing proposed to be done and the self-abbreviating relaxation of the thing done, the variations of ethical codes, the inanity of extolled virtue, the apathy of the stars.
Then,
He kissed a plump, mellow, yellow, smellow melons of her rump on each plump, melodious hemisphere in their mellow, yellow furrow, with obscure, prolonged, provocative, melanous osculation.
what followed this silent action?
Somnolent invocation, less somnolent recognition, incipient excitation, pathetical interrogation.
With what modifications did the narrator reply to this interrogation?
Negative. He omitted to mention the clandestine correspondence between Martha Clifford and Henry Flower, the public altercation at, in, and in the vicinity of the licensed premises of Bernard Kiernan and Co. Limited. The erotic provocation and response thereto caused by the exhibitionism of Gertrude, Gertie, surname unknown, positive. He included mention of a volume of pornographical tendency entitled Sweets of Sin, anonymous author, a gentleman of fashion, a temporary concussion caused by a falsely calculated movement in the course of a post-senile gymnastic display. The victim, since completely recovered, being Stephen Daedalus, professor and author eldest surviving son of Simon Daedalus, of no fixed occupation.
Which event or person emerged as the salient point of his narration?
Stephen Daedalus, professor and author.
In what directions did the listener and narrator lie?
Listener. S by E, narrator, N by W, on the 53rd parallel of latitude, N and 6th meridian of longitude, W at the angle of 45 degrees to the terrestrial equator.
In what state of rest or motion?
At rest, relatively to themselves and to each other. In motion, being each and both carried westward, forward and rearward respectively, by the proper perpetual motion of the earth through ever-changing tracks of never-changing space.
In what posture?
Listening. Reclined semi-laterally, left hand on the head, right leg extended in a straight line and resting on left leg, flexed. Narrator, reclined laterally, left with right and left legs flexed, the index finger and thumb of the right hand resting on the bridge of the nose.
Weary?
He rests, he has traveled.
With? Don't leave him in suspense.
Sinbad the sailor and Tinbad the tailor and Jinbad the jailer and Windbad the whaler and Ninbad the nailer and Finbad the failor and Binbad the baler and Pinbad the paler and Minbad the mailer and Hinbad the hailer and Rinbad the railer and Binbad the caler and Vinbad the quailer and Lindbad the yailer and Zinbad the pathfaler.
When?
Going to the dark bed, there was a square round Sinbad the sailor's rock, ox egg in the night of the bed, of all the ox of the rocks, of darkening dead and bright day tailor.
Where? And there is no answer. Bloom has returned, fallen asleep, and the last word is now left in Dan Cleary. Also appearing in The Ladies of the Women of Lockerbie at the Repertory Theater. Prior to that, in the Year of the Rooster at the Red Theater. Please welcome Miss Barbara Button.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Because he never did a thing like that before. It's asked to get his breakfast in his bed with a couple of eggs. Not since the City Arms Hotel, when he used to be pretending to be laid up. With a sick voice to His Highness to make himself interesting. And still, if ever he got anything really serious the matter with him, it's much better in a hospital where everything is clean. But then I suppose I'd have to bring it into him for a month, yes. And the next thing we'd have a hospital nurse on the carpet, or a nun maybe. Like that smutty photo he had. She's as much a nun as I'm not. Then I hate bandaging and dosing. But if it was a thing I was sick, then we'd see what attention. Only of course a woman hides it so it's not to feel all the trouble they do. Yes. He came somewhere. I'm sure by his appetite. Anyway, love, it's not. Or he'd be off his feet in a heart. So it was one of those night women. If it was down there, he was really in the hotel story made up. A pack of lies to hide it. If they only knew as well as I do, yes. Because the day before yesterday, he was scribbling something, a letter. When I came into the front room to show him Dignam's death in the paper. And he covered it up with a blotting paper, pretending to be thinking about business. So very probably that was it. To somebody who thinks she has a softie in him. Because all men get a bit like that at his age. So as to wheedle any money she can out of him. No fool like an old fool. Then the usual kissing my bottom was to hide it. Not that I care two straws who he does it with, or knew before that way. I'd like to find out, so long as I don't have the two of them under my nose all the time. Like that slut, that Mary we had in Ontario Terrace, padding out her false bottom to excite him. One woman is not enough for them. It was all his fault, of course, ruining servants, then proposing she could eat at our table on Christmas Day, if you please. Oh, no, thank you. Not in my house. Her face swelled with temper when I gave her week's notice. Better to do without them altogether. Do the rooms out myself quicker. I gave it to him anyway. Either she or me leave the house. I couldn't even touch him if I thought he was a dirty, barefaced liar and slumming like that one. Oh, yes. Because he couldn't possibly do without it for so long. So he must do it somewhere. The last time he came on my bottom, when was it? The night Boylan gave my hand a great squeeze, and I just pressed the back of his like that with my thumb. Simply ruination for any woman, no satisfaction in it, pretending to like it till he comes, and then finish it off myself anyway. And it makes your lips pale. Anyhow, for all the talk of the world that people make, it's only the first time. After that, it's just the way you do it. Think no more about it. Why can't you kiss a man without going and marrying him first? I wish some man or other would take me sometime when he's there, kiss me in his arms. There's nothing like a kiss long and hot down to your soul. Almost paralyzed you. Then I hate that confession. When I used to go to Father Corrigan, he touched me, Father. And what harm if he did? Where? And I said, on the canal bank. Like a fool. But whereabouts on your person, child? On the leg, behind. High up, was it? Yes, rather high up. Was it where you sit down? Yes. Oh, Lord. Couldn't he say bottom right out and be done with it? I wonder, did he know me in the box? I could see his face, he couldn't see mine. Of course he'd never turn or let on. I'd like to be embraced by one in his vestments, with the smell of incense off him, like the Pope. Besides, there's danger with a priest if you're married. He's too careful about himself. Then they come and tell you there's no God. I wouldn't give a snap of my two fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something? I often ask them, atheists, or whatever they call themselves, wash the cobbles off themselves first. Then they go howling for the priest and dying. And why? Because they're afraid of hell, on account of their bad conscience. Ah, yes, I know them well. Who was the first person in the universe before there was anybody? Who made it all? Who? That they don't know. Neither do I. So there you are. They might as well try to stop the sun from rising tomorrow. The sun shines for you, he said the day we were lying among the rhododendrons, in the gray tweed suit and his straw hat. The day I got him to propose to me, yes. First, I gave him the bit of secret out of my mouth. And it was leap year like now. Yeah, 16 years ago. My God. After that long kiss, I near lost my breath. He said I was a flower of the mountain. Yes. So we are flowers all, a woman's body. Yes, that was one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes, that was why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is. And I knew I could always get around him. And I gave him all the pleasure I could, lead him on till he asked me to say yes. And I wouldn't answer at first, only looked out over the sea and the sky. I was thinking of so many things he didn't know of. The Spanish girls laughing in their shawls and tall combs, and the auctions in the morning, with the Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs, and the devil knows who else from all the ends of Europe and Duke Street. And those handsome Moors, all in white, with turbans like kings, asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop. And the wine shops half open at night, and the castanets. And the night we missed the boat at Algeciras. And the sea. The sea crimson sometimes like fire. And the glorious sunsets. And the fig trees in the Alameda Gardens. Yes, and all the queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses. And the rose gardens, and the jessamine and geraniums and cactuses. And Gibraltar as a girl, when I was a flower of the mountain. When I put the rose in my hair, like the Andalusian girls used. Or shall I wear red? And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall. And I thought, well, as well him as another. And I asked him with my eyes to ask again. And he asked me, would I, yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first, I drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts all perfumed. Yes, and his heart was going like mad. And yes, I said, yes, I will. Yes.
Next year, celebrate life, celebrate Bllomsday, rejoice.